The Illusion of Time is the sophomore full-length album from New York City-based death doom metal band Funeral Leech, and we could qualify that death doom metal tag with some traditional doom metal influences as well as funeral doom metal influences, uh, to the point where we get a pretty strong modern death doom metal band here that is rooted in old school influences. And I think a lot of these folks started out playing in grindcore or sludge metal groups over the years, and this is sort of their old school death metal group in most ways, which cropped up again around 2015 or so. They've been mostly compared to bands like Bolt Thrower, Rune Magic, and Hooded Menace. I would say nowadays probably something closer to Innumerable Forms or Temple of Void in terms of pulling in a little bit of the early 90s British doom metal movement, not necessarily full on Peaceful 3, but some influences directly from there as well. And that's led to two pretty impressive full lengths. This is the second one, and I've been a big fan of Death Meditation. I bought the LP, all that, and so this time around, they're basically just refining what they do, and I think that they've done well to bring me back for more listens this time around. I think that they've given me something special about each song. They've given a new texture, a new sound, a bigger riff. There's always a reason to go and push through to the next song and check out what they're going to do next. I think it's just baseline a little bit more interesting to start out as a full listen, but they haven't changed anything so drastically that you won't recognize them. We'll cut to a song here and just get a sense of just how the record sounds to start. Now, the introduction of keyboards to a death metal album in the past, that was a questionable choice in a lot of ways. A lot of bands were just kind of bad at it. And what we find these days is a lot of groups are kind of getting away with it and doing pretty well. And I would count Funeral Leech as they've made a good choice to incorporate keyboards into a lot of these songs because it does add to their death doom metal feeling and that funereal sensibility that they bring. They don't fully go for melodic death doom here, but there are some stark, very brief sections that do feel like there's some funeral doom metal involved. Otherwise, we will resign that to maybe the end of the album where that really starts to show up, because there is still a lot of active and aggressive old school death metal influences charging along throughout the bulk of this record. And I would say they're still rooted in maybe the early era of bands like Tomb Mold and the Finnish death metal sort of upturn around that time, where a lot more bands were trying those types of riffs, and it leaves a certain level of complexity and capability here where it's not fully technical in any performative sense, but it does feel like Funeral Leech are better players. They're maybe a little bit sharper in terms of incorporating more riffs into every song, and they sort of patiently balance that with doom metal, and that dynamic is kind of what makes this record engaging and interesting overall, and what kept me coming back to it. I think there's something to be said for a band that can kind of curate an album in a knowing sense that really has a taste for what is good and what is just average these days. And so their curation of the packaging, the production, the messaging on the record, everything seems to come together for this album. And in a way, Death Meditations was so impressive that it seemed really difficult to follow up. And I think a lot of people will have that blockage in mind where it's like, well, is it as good as the last one? And it's confounding in a way that, yeah, it's exactly as good as the last one. I think it's I don't have to necessarily see the bar raised. They've held that parity really closely. I think this record is just as good as the last one. There's some minor changes. There's some major changes in terms of maybe the production values change. Pretty much just a very solid death metal record with the doom being a fundamental part of it. I don't know that it's always the most emotionally driven style of doom metal. That isn't necessary. I think that the lyrics convey quite a bit, and the standard is very high here. A great showing from Funeral Leech for their second record. Again, that's a high recommendation for me. This comes out this Friday on April 5th. And yeah, check it out for yourself. Read the review for more coherent thoughts, and see what you think.